Welcome, everybody, to our 21 days breaking through matrix programming with your energy healers and energy coaches from transCODES. My name is Jona Bryndis.
And Jeff Casper.
Hello.
Hey,
Thank
everybody.
you for coming and for being part of this wonderful tool that we will develop into a video course after we have gone through these 21 days together. And just a quick note here on the format, we're airing live, which means we want to be there for your guys' comments and questions. So the whole purpose of doing this live is to get as much feedback from you as in regards to like perhaps challenges that you have with this. All right, yes, and thank you for your encouraging comments here. This is always a challenge when you do things live. So I hope that we can operate everything in a good manner.
We need like 2 keyboards and 4 screens.
Yeah, or like a whole crew of people that help us to deal with all the software stuff. You have no idea. Anyway. So let's get started here. Our episodes will take 15 to 20 minutes each day. Today, maybe a little longer, simply because we're going to introduce the outline to you as well. And before we get started into what these tasks are, these energy training lessons, as we call them, that we're going to share here with you, what these tasks are that we want you to do. First of all, there is the idea that we could change a habit or that we could break through an existing habit in 21 days. This is a myth. It has been proven many times in extensive scientific research that it actually takes 66 days to break a habit. And further studies showed that, after 66 days, really, we've only reached what they call a plateau, meaning that there is sort of the initial challenges that we have kind of disappear after 66 days. So why do we still call this 21 days? It's very simple. When you break down your learning curve, your curve of changing patterns, no matter whether it's on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a mental level, spiritual or energetic level, there's a certain cycle that we all go through. And this cycle, as we have broken it down, can be divided into 12 major segments, all right? And I don't want to get too mental on you right now, but I do want you to see that when we are talking about 12 days, we're talking about going through this very cycle here every day. And let's look at this here real quick. Okay, what are we up against when we want to change something in our lives, when we want to make a change, or when we want to create a new habit, or when we want to create or let go of an old habit, or when we want to break through something on a deeper level that is inhibiting us from reaching our goals, reaching our intentions. So what we are up against here, and I want you to pay attention to the outer, the more orangey sort of cycle that you see there, starting up at 12 o'clock with intention. So the first thing that we are up against is our intention. Why would I say we're up against our intention? The reason for that is, and this will be subject of our today's energy training lesson, namely the challenge, is that most of our intentions come from an external source, even if we're not aware of it. And that leads to almost like a setup for sabotage, a setup for failure, because if our intention is not truly coming from within, if it is not an internal place that can motivate us, then we depend on external validation. We depend on external impulses that keep giving us the feedback that it's the right thing that we're doing. And you may have already guessed this, but as energy coaches and energy healers, we are obviously here to tell you that this needs to come from within. But there is a big cycle attached to that, how we can even start discerning whether our intentions are external or internal. And so that is the biggest challenge in the beginning of the cycle. Then comes, of course, our determination. Now we are ready to do something, and we have certain emotions. We either have pain or we have fear. Let's reflect on that with some of our health goals, right? A lot of us people have the goal, to lose weight or to do more exercise, and this comes from a place of either fear or pain, meaning we want to avoid pain. And of course, we are afraid that if we don't do anything about it, that it turns into like something bigger or even more pain, And on the other hand, we have the problem with pleasure. We don't really want to do this because it doesn't appear to be very pleasurable to refrain from the nice foods that we like so much, the comfort foods, or our comfort zone altogether. So the second challenge is the determination. And we think that we have to approach this with our willpower, with our third chakra energy, okay, with the force that we have in us. And we're going to talk about this in the second and third day, how we need to switch this or reframe this into a vision of how do we want to feel, not so much what we want to avoid. And then the next challenge is the courage. We come in with, yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, let's do this together,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we realize how much comfort zone we have and how that works against us. And then next comes all the resistance that comes forward that pops up in like, not today, justifications, delays, procrastinations, our ego story. And then comes our conditioning. Oh, I've always done it that way. I don't even know any different ways. And to become aware, that some of the reasons why we sabotage ourselves or how we set ourselves up for failure is in our conditioning. And this conditioning also explains why we call this whole cycle here, this 21-day cycle, breaking through matrix programming, because a lot of this conditioning is not even coming from within ourselves. It's coming from the outside. And you can start with looking at karmic aspects, you can look at inner child aspects, and you can look at some of the experiences, the negative experiences we've had in our life that condition us. And most of these are part of our collective conditioning. And that's why we call this breaking through matrix programming, because most of us actually detect that the biggest part of our inner conflicts and challenges actually come from the collective, and we'll explain all that in the days to come. Then the next challenge is, the actual, what do I do? Like when I catch myself in those moments that I'm caught in my patterns, when I've already realized, okay, I've got patterns here. Obviously, they go really deep, and I don't really know what to do. Then comes the shifting aspect, the practical aspect. How can I retrain myself? How can I reprogram myself to shift out of some of these programmings? And then the next challenge is the clearing part, and that is part of our ego. And there's a reason why ego and payoff and appreciation and intention are on these cornerstones, on those four cornerstones of our challenges, is the payoff. So when we find ourselves in patterns that we can't change, then there always is a payoff there that makes us stay there. So in other words, there's a part of us, and that of course is the ego part in us, that gets something out of staying there. And we need to learn how to clear this. and how to reframe, the payoff into different terms so that we can still motivate our ego to be on our side and to agree to change altogether. Because if we run into these initial resistances, then we'll find out that we cannot really do anything here without our ego agreeing to some point. All right.
Well, the entire process too is about embracing it, not about saying it's bad or denying it or pushing it away. It's about embracing the entire process. So that effectively changes it immediately. You're not denying, you're not compartmentalizing, you're actually embracing. So that makes it a much more powerful method.
And that's then the next challenge,
Mm-hmm.
as to how do I embrace this? And we will teach you energy training modalities that will help you to connect a little more, because underneath every fear, every resistance, every shadow, every pattern that we cannot resolve ourselves is a true feeling. And this true feeling is something that most of us have lost in the course of our lives through this conditioning. So we will learn how to connect with the true feeling, the true need underneath it. And then the challenge that comes after that is to agree to correcting these things as we encounter them. That links into the embracing part that Jeff just meant. To really embrace, every time you run into a deadlock, because that's an opportunity for you to make a correction. And correction not in sort of the correctional or punitive way as most of us at first understand it, but correction in terms of adjusting to things and also embracing the flow that can come out of that.
And the fun actually comes out of that too. Yes.
And then the next part of this 21-day journey then has to do with a reward. Well, how can we motivate our the just enough to play with us, with our higher intentions and the purpose that the reason why we do all this, but without going into the coping patterns that we have already discovered until then. So we will help you to reframe that. And then the last two parts are really just to accept that the cycle is a repetition. It is a cycle. That's why there are arrows, and that's why this is a circle, because it's not done, after you've figured all these things out and reframed them. That's more or less the beginning. And then the last part of this journey is accepting that this is a constant challenge, that it's a constant refinement process. And this will then help us to reframe what growth and what evolution really mean. They mean constant change, constant refinement. So this is what we have on our menu here for you as far as guiding you through these different lessons. And today's lesson is about how can we sort of formulate something, not goals, but something that is truly congruent with what we truly want to change. So one of the biggest issues is that most of us are very good in forming intentions, but we don't realize. Let me get this picture away here from our faces. We don't really realize that intentions really only cover a small part of our energetic being, and that there's way more parts of us that have to be addressed. And so what we will do here with every lesson is to give you a way to contextualize this within these different aspects of these different layers, if you will, of your energy body. And you will see here on the screen that we've divided the density of our energy system into 6 parts. We're only going to address 5 really, simply because the etheric and energetic, the blue and the purple part that you see there, is the same for most. The more you work with these energetic layers, with these parts of you, if you will, and bringing them together, the more you will be able to discern some of these things And so eventually you will discover that there is a slight difference between the etheric and the energetic. But that's down the road, and only really for those of you who want to learn, energy work and how to really work and manage your energies. This course here is designed for everybody, so you don't really have to have prior knowledge of energy work. But I do want to introduce the idea that we are not just body, mind, and spirit. We are body, which is the physical. We are emotional, which has a lot to do with our physical still because it's tied into our autonomous nervous system. Then we have the mental, which has to do with our ideas and our intentions. And then we have the spiritual, which has to do with our beliefs and the meaning that we give to things. And then we have the etheric, which has to do with some of the parts, that we come into this world with, our propensities, our karma, for instance. And the energetic then is the one that happens for us, that is, on a code level, that has nothing to do really with what we believe or what we feel or how we feel this in our bodies. But the point of energy coaching is to help you with a roadmap to develop this higher vibratory pathway that then ultimately includes all of these layers of your energy. You can't separate one from the other. So how many times have you found yourselves in a place where you had great intentions, but then the next day something happens, you feel a little sick, or somebody yells at you and you feel really down in your emotions, or there comes news and TV and that shifts your perspective and your beliefs, that you forget about your intentions immediately and go back into your old patterns. This happens to all of us, and that's because we are usually not connected with all of these layers at the same time. So a big part of this course here is to help you to see things from these different perspectives. Yes, we will work on showing us and those pictures at the same time in the edited version. This is the live version, and in order for you to see things, we have to cover up our faces. Otherwise, it gets too small and you can't really see it. But thank you, David. That is a good point. Thanks for the comment. All right, so let's look at a day one called the challenge. Which is, of course, the challenge all together. And we just reflected the different parts of the challenge, which we will continuously reflect on. The first day is dedicated to finding out what our true goals are, which means we have to learn how to reframe our intentions into purpose. And this starts with the process of course, asking you, what do I want to achieve? So is it a physical goal? Is it a goal that has to do with my relationships? Does it have to do with my emotions? Does it have to do with the way I approach things or say things? Or does it have to do with my overall alignment? So these are basically the translations of the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and energetic layers. And at the beginning of finding out what our true goals are, or what our purpose is of the change, is admitting that we are not in control right now. If we feel the need to change, it means that there's something that we're doing, thinking, emoting, feeling, expressing, that we are not fully in control of. And this might surprise you a bit, but this is at the core of formulating goals and intentions, is to admit to yourself that the way it is right now is not working for me. And once you passed the admitting part, then you will basically be held to ask, well, what is it that I truly want to achieve with this? What is it that, how I want to feel differently? And this is what we want to talk to you about today, is how to find that pathway to determine what your true purpose of the change that you want to accomplish is. And in order to feel this, you're going to have to learn how to really switch into the inside and weed out the external things that are bombarding you or that are dominating you through your matrix programming. So the way this goes practically is that every time you have a goal that comes forward for you, I want you to write this down, and then I want you to ask yourself if this is something that has to do with the outside, or if this is something that has to do with you from the inside. Basically, I want you to start day one, and this will be your homework basically until tomorrow, to look into which part of this intention is motivated by external goals or external impulses, and which part of this is motivated by internal goals and internal motivations, and then to focus on the internal and to weed out the external. And how do you do this? What we recommend here, and this is all part of our Sacred Self-Healing course in detail, we recommend people to address the how, do I truly feel about this from all different levels, from all different layers of their energy system. And this is what we're here for now. We want to show you how you can go through this congruence check with yourself, this question on these different layers. So physically, what is the easiest way physically to find out how you truly feel? That is to actually use your breath. And this is why most therapies and most spiritual modalities also include breath, because that helps you to anchor things into your physical, to include your physical. So the first recommendation we have for you, working on discerning, intentions versus purpose, discerning which is internal and which is external, is to use your physical and to breathe into your heart. And breathing into your heart is a little different from just breathing, okay? So yes, there are, of course, advantages and benefits of deep breathing, diaphragm breathing, which we don't want to go into here right now. We have videos on that show how to do heart breathing in detail. But really all I'm asking you to do is, at this level here, is to breathe into your heart as opposed to your lungs. Most of us, without knowing, we breathe in. Of course, we don't usually breathe in all the way. We only really use 5 to 10% of our lungs capacity. We breathe in shallowly. But I want you to take a deep breath, and the way you can tell and physically feel how this is actually arriving in your heart is by visualizing, to breathe it all into your heart, or heart center, which is like right here at the center of your chest. Whereas if we do normal unconscious breathing, we picture our breath going into our lungs, and then we picture our out breath, our exhale, to go sort of forward. And this is the part that I want you to change. When you do heart breathing, you breathe into your heart, into your center, which is much lower than we would normally breathe into. And I want you to breathe out sideways, not forward, because the forward breath and the forward orientation of, breathing is something that sets our energy body up for forward leaning. And we'll explain that later, why that is not a good thing. But for now, the physical task, the physical homework, which will help you to differentiate intentions from purpose, is doing heart breathing. So every time you have time now within the next 24 hours to think about what are my true intentions and how you can formulate this sort of as a deeper purpose for yourself, I want you to do the heart breathing while you're doing this. And I really want you to feel your heart. Emotionally, how can this translate emotionally? Emotionally, you have to feel out what is sort of, like how I talked about the fear, for instance, when you have goals such as doing more exercise or having a better diet. Find out what the underlying emotion is. Is it fear based? Are you afraid that if you don't do this, you're going to get sick? And I want you to just take note of that. We'll work with this later, but I want you to observe, what the underlying emotion is. Let's say if my goal was to lose 20 pounds, right? What is the underlying emotion underneath that? What is it really about? That, I look better, okay. So when I look better, what changes? That other people think I'm cooler, or that they love me more? These are the kind of questions that you can ask yourselves. In regards to your mental layer of your energy body, ask yourself what belief is behind this. What belief is behind that idea that people have to have a certain weight or body, BMI index to be healthy? We now know that this is not the case. So there's a healthy weight for everybody, and that has nothing to do with what's considered to be, slim looking. So there's matrix programming that we all have in regards to how we think health is defined. Yeah, so it's all about the mental layer is all about detecting the hidden beliefs, the things that we are not entirely aware of, but to take a moment for that and to really check out why you want this. Like, what's the belief, the idea behind all that? And then on a spiritual level, to address that part, you got to ask yourself, okay, so does this really mean, like when I'm 20 pounds lighter, right, that my life is going to change? Does my relationship change? Does the way I feel about myself change? Yes, it changes in the sense that we get maybe approval from the outside, but deep down, when it comes to my true self, does this really change the way I feel inside of myself? And if so, write this down. Mm-hmm. And then from an energetic standpoint, the discernment between intention and purpose has to do with the larger picture, with the larger context. Okay, what is it, how does this lead me to, the bigger picture, to where I want to end up, like say, in 10 years or in 20 years from now? It has to do with our integrity. Is this even something that I want? Mm-hmm. Do I really want to be seen as, like the world's slimmest person? No. I want to feel good about myself, and I want to be able to express this in my relationship, in my job, with my physical, with my financial. So I want to align myself to abundance, because that's really what all of us want. We all ultimately have the same goal, and that is, to live a life in abundant love, wealth, and health. And so oftentimes we find that we have to do a little bit of reframing here on the energetic level, and understand that for as long as we are focusing on what we don't have, and our only goal, is to get what we don't have, we sometimes miss the bigger picture. I hope this makes sense. And so the energy work modality tied to this first energy training lesson is called heart breathing. Mm-hmm. And this will allow you to go into the deeper discernment of what's internal and what's external. And with that, then we can move on tomorrow and see how much of that is actually coming from or throughout our matrix programming, or how much of that is coming throughout our ego programming, And that will then lead us deeper sort of into the true devotion to whatever our need to change or our goal or intention is. Any questions here? If you think about a few practical questions, but Jeff and I will go through this right now. So, what are some of the, the practical sort of cycles that we go through with finding out what is external and what is internal? For me, it's always been this conflict that I have in my mind anyway, and that is judging myself or seeing myself through others, seeing myself through, what other people may think about me. And so today I know that everything that comes from that place, of when I see myself through the eyes of others, that this is my ego place, that this is the part that is external, even though I call it my ego part. But my ego part is basically the layer of me that is mostly dominated, mostly influenced through outer things. So I go internal then and say, okay, I recognize, that there's a fear, that there's a pain, or that there's a desire here. Okay. And instead of fueling this, I go into this place within myself. I create this space within myself that is safe, where there's no judgment. And I ask myself, okay, if there was nothing from the outside, how would I do it? Or what would I do? Yes. And thank you for commenting on this. It's really about asking rather than, asking yourself, what it really is that's underneath, the desire, that would make you look good. That's a very good way to see this, that, every time you see yourself through the eyes of another, you're basically going into that external part of you that then further fuels the ego.
Well, and what you talked about there is you shifted out of your thinkingness and your emoting and the judgment aspect. You're actually shifting into feeling versus thinking. And when you go into feeling, when you go into that safe space that Jona talked about there, where you begin to breathe from the heart and you practice this exercise, it begins to kind of show you what is emoting, what is thinking, and what is really truly underneath it. So that's the practice. So how she described it is the same thing I do when I begin to feel off. Like I can tell I'm either getting too intense or I'm getting too emotional or I'm getting thinking way too much. I take that break. I step back and I begin to pull back in and breathe a little bit. And as I do that, what I'm shifting is I'm shifting out of the ego mind. I'm shifting out of that ego response or reaction more so, and I'm moving into what is it underneath? What is it that's really going on? And by doing that, I begin to release all those, for lack of a better word for me, the dramas that are in my life, and then I can go back into centering and seeing what is really needed in that moment.
Yes. So to summarize, the task for this day is to create the space, the safe space within, where all these external things that dominate us or can dominate, our desires, our needs or wants, where they can get neutralized, where it's really just you and you. That's the purpose behind switching from external into internal. All right, and tomorrow we're going to talk about a bit more about the sort of workings of our ego and how we deal with these external factors when they dominate us. And this will then lead, to us seeing that actually what it is that controls our needs and wants and desires. All right. And we will be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Actually, we had a little glitch in our calendar. So when we have public transmissions going on at 1 p.m., we can't really change them. So tomorrow will be 2 hours later than today, simply because we have a public session at 1 p.m. And if you are interested, in the deeper aspects of this and the energetic aspect more explained, then check out our Sacred Self Healing Program. This is really the essence, of how to learn how to work with your energies, how to how to liberate yourself from outer energetic influences, all the way to how you can protect yourself etherically and how you can learn to find this higher vibratory pathway for your life. Not, according to what we think is right, but according to what is true to you. Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope to see you tomorrow, same time. No, actually 2 hours later, but then every day it's going to be at the same time. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And don't forget to smash that like button. This is your payment for us because we're not monetizing these videos. So push the like button and share our videos.
Yes, please.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.